Like to take the opportunity to welcome everybody here to our regular scheduled board meeting for the Newfoundland Labrador English School District. It's good to see after all these changing times that the trustees have managed to be able to come to St. John's and deal with the important issues that we are dealing with as it relates to the start of school and the uncertain times or the changing times that we're involved in. I'd like to take this moment to really recognize the fantastic work that our staff, right from the teachers, right from our administrative staff to our support workers in the schools, have really done in order to get schools ready for this year, and schools ready in a really, really challenging time where there are guidelines and rules that have been placed on us that make the start of school this year very distinctly different than it has been in the past. We seem to have a bunch of gangsters that go to school now rather than the regular children that we've seen in previous years because of the masking and all those pieces. But the important part is that school has started and we've had very little major road bumps on that road to school this year. We've had some extremely challenging times for our busing service, and even within those challenging times we've been able to overcome the pieces, and we're getting to a place now where the busing system is starting to resemble as close to normal as we possibly can. So thank you for all that work that you've done over the summer. The planning has obviously paid off because we haven't had that rough of a start for this year. Thank you to the trustees for taking the time this weekend to come out. And without further ado, I should also welcome the individuals that are tying in to our live broadcast from across the province. Understanding that education is absolutely a critical and important part of pretty well everybody's life in Newfoundland and Labrador in terms of the population of our student base and the families that are affected every day. So welcome for that. I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the agenda for our board meeting. So moved by Peter, seconded by Wayne. All in favor? Those against? Motion carries. Board minutes. We want to consider the minutes from June 12th, 2020. They're in your package that were sent out prior for review. Are there any errors or omissions within the minutes? Hearing none, can I get a motion to accept the minutes? Moved by Eric, seconded by Pam. Any discussion, question? All in favor? Those against? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is there is no new business, so we're going to move on to the number 5, which is our director's report.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome, everybody. So, Director's Report for September 26, 2020. So this is a photo of Ellie. Ellie is a student at St. Mary's Elementary on the very first day of school, and this is a photo taken by her dad. I think she's pretty euphoric about getting back. Lots of excitement around the return to school. So I'll cover these points today in this briefing on the back to school primarily. Lots of students in school, hearing great reports from our administrators around that our students are complying with the mask rules, just like they are here in the photo from Indian River High in the Chemistry 3202 lab. Overall, given the circumstances, not perfect, but we'll give ourselves a very, very good grade on this one. I really want to single out our school administrators who are working through some complex problems, individual to each school location. The staff, that includes the teaching staff, teachers and teaching and learning assistants, student assistants, the custodial staff, all of the headquarters staff that back them up and have been working on this really since back in March when we had to abruptly end the 2019-2020 school year. And of course, first and foremost, our students and our families. One of the areas that we've had difficulty with, obviously, has been student transportation issues. Having learned in the middle of August about the restriction on the capacity within a bus, we've made a lot of progress, and I'll speak to that as we go. As well as we'll discuss another highlight, the 10 teaching units that were announced on September 3rd. We're working through other issues as time progresses. We do need to discuss at some point. Right now we have outdoor physical activities as part of extracurricular. We never said we were going to limit completely indoor activities, but there have to be parameters set around those, and they had to be discussed in light of the Chief Medical Officer of Health's advice. And I really wanted to let folks know that maybe listening, watching from outside, that our frequently asked questions site, there's a lot of new information. Things evolve constantly. They change, sometimes hourly, daily, weekly, whatever. We pay a lot of attention to our frequently asked questions and update them on a continual basis, and that is the best source for information pertaining to schools. In the area of student transportation, I alluded to it earlier. In the middle of August, we were advised of new public health restrictions, limiting the bus capacity to 46 students, essentially cutting our capacity significantly by over a third. So we were 3 weeks looking at the school year start, and the initial work was on assigning the first 46 eligible riders on the 1,100 routes we had at that time throughout the province. In most cases, that was those who lived furthest from the school, but not in all cases. It was an enormous amount of work from a small but dedicated busing staff who really pulled through and are making this happen as we move into September. Phenomenal effort. In the area of student transportation, government announced much needed additional resources, initially pegged at $10 million. We'll probably go beyond that into the $12 or even $15 million range for new busing services. The contractors work with the district to source additional buses, bus drivers. Service NL is in support, and we are slowly but surely, methodically, getting to look after all eligible riders, but a significant undertaking. Early days, 40% complete of our schools, 70% within a week. Last Monday was 85%, and as of Monday coming and into the week, we will be in the 94 to 98% complete. Some statistics: of our 64,000 odd students, there's about 42,000 and a half eligible riders. So about 2/3 of our students use the bus as a means of transportation to school. Lots of inquiries into our system, 600% increase over last year. As well, a lot of data had to be manipulated within our system. There were some 18,000 almost addresses that had to be adjusted in Power School. That's residential addresses for students. We've added 145 additional buses, both contracted and board-owned, resulting in another 200 runs, so 1,100 now plus 200, we're over 1,300 runs. Put in 1,500 bus stops, all of which had to be looked at from a safety perspective. Hired 49 drivers in our process. That's board-owned, but we in our board-owned operation, you also have leaves and retirements as well. It is still a challenge recruiting bus drivers, and there are a lot of areas with brand new drivers. The courtesy seating, a lot of people are concerned about courtesy seating and stops. Once we get the eligible riders all looked at, and as we get schools up and running, we are providing information to schools to slowly get at the applications for courtesy seating. And the application form is on our website and downloadable. But be patient. The schools have had a lot to deal with, and the administrators of those schools have full loads, and they will get to it as soon as they are able. In recruitment and hiring overall, the district's employment recruitment efforts continue. Since April 24th of this year, there have been over 2,500 jobs posted. We've received 111,000 applications, and contracts offers accepted almost 2,000. There are 70 term contract positions that have been advertised and are in the process of being completed in accordance with collective agreement. Teachers have been in these positions since school opened. So what happens when you get a late addition for a term contract, you immediately put somebody in that position, but the normal competitions under the auspices of the collective agreement continue normally. There have been 10 administrative units added by government, but we've also leveraged that with 5 from our own resources, so 15 in total. There were from government allocations, there were 25 additional guidance units, in addition to the 26 odd that we had already added to ourselves. 165 additional support staff, mostly in the custodial area, added. There are 10, at present, 10 remote learning positions that are in progress of being filled. These are teaching positions. And almost 4,000 student assistant hours were assigned. So that extra amount, about 284 hours per day, have been assigned for student assistants in the province. Under the Education Action Plan, which was in play, we're at the final year of the Education Action Plan right now. In total, over these last 3 years, and this is the biggest year, the biggest influx, we're up to over 100 reading specialists, 38 and a half additional learning resource teachers. That's what people would know as formerly as a teacher librarian. Teaching and learning assistants, almost 200, and instructional resource teachers for small schools. Those positions were added over the 3 years. In terms of attendance, attendance last week was the second week of school, which is the first full week of school. The attendance of midweek was around 90%. The middle of last week, of this week just passed, it was about 85%, which is phenomenally good considering that we are having folks adhere to the checklist from the Chief Medical Officer of Health with respect to COVID-19 screening. Parents, families, students are following that, and that's good. That's keeping our schools healthy. There are a number of cold-like symptoms on the go, and that's understandable to have this attendance rate. It's not drastically lower than a normal September, so we're very pleased with the attendance rate overall. And a little snap there from Bayview Academy showing students going through the motion of holding hands, but following the social distancing protocol. Everybody took us up on this challenge to go outdoors. There's been numerous examples of outdoor activity, authentic learning happening in our environment, and we're very pleased to see that. A couple of photos here. This is an outdoor classroom that looks like a group of parent volunteers have established in Holyrood and Holy Cross. And they've also gone as far as to snakes and ladders, giant snakes and ladders, and what looks like a checkers or chess set on the paved area outside the school. So we'd love to see this stuff. Great ingenuity. Another example here from Mary Queen of Peace, where you've got an outdoor classroom established. In terms of student travel, I know a lot of concerns from parents there. We are working with Explorica and EF Tours. These are our primary providers for travel. All of the 2020 trips have been canceled, and we are working with the operators with respect to 2021 trips. And the options right now are that are being given to parents and schools would be to either cancel those or reschedule later. And you can't just blanket cancel these trips without some consideration of the insurance implications, and that is a discussion that we're having ongoing with those two service providers. And we expect some more formal communications on this in the days ahead. Even though we're into a COVID environment and we're operating schools safely, there are a lot of initiatives that we need to carry on with. In fact, last spring, March month, we had our last big conference on deep learning. It was probably the last face-to-face conference in North America where Global Pedagogies for Deep Learning attended with us. And we had a lot of momentum built up from those few days. Many of the trustees here attended that session. That momentum, initially, we felt like we lost it when the COVID came in and we shut the schools down virtually 3 or 4 days later, the following week. However, this reliance on good at learning, good at life held us in good stead. In hindsight, it was well-timed because it positioned us well to operate in this COVID environment and helped us in our planning for what was to happen during this school year. The district has been working with world-renowned expert in learning, Dr. Michael Fullen, and the purpose of the initiative is to improve learning and well-being of all students and teachers. And it includes the learning domains of literacy, numeracy, and high school success, as well as the development of 6 global competencies: character, citizenship, collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking. And strategies of learning partnerships, teaching practices, learning environment, and leveraging digital, which certainly everyone will appreciate. We certainly are leveraging digital now in these times. In August, the district held 2 days of professional learning with all of our directors of schools and our program staff, along with some of our principals in our advisory group. And 150 principals joined a 1-hour session with Michael Fullen on system change. And as the only English school district for the entire province, it really is a whole system change on a large scale. The work is organized into 3 phases: clarity, depth, and sustainability. And we anticipate focusing this year on building capacity and clarity for all NLESD educators and staff. We conducted recently, just this past week, a Facilitators Institute where some 95 to 100 program staff have been given a couple of days of in-depth preparation. There will be another day in October, and these folks will be catalysts and agents to help with schools in focusing on deep learning initiatives as we go forward. In terms of the Education Action Plan, as I alluded to before, with the staff increases, 40 schools the first year, 40 the second, and now this past year, the remaining schools with K-6 populations. So this responsive teaching and learning policy is now being fully implemented. Of course, you know, it's never done. The work is never done. The professional learning continues. During the spring into summer period, there was a lot. We used the opportunity to do some phase 3 professional learning. When I say phase 3, that's professional learning for the schools that are entering now for the first time this year in the areas of numeracy, literacy, all of the other factors, and transitioning to responsive teaching and learning. And into this year, starting in August and going on into October, a number of professional learning events are planned to not just for the phase 3s, we also go back and loop in the phase 1 and 2 schools from 2 years ago into this process as well. So you'll see that illustrated on this slide. A couple of closeouts for phase 3 schools coming up in October, November. Work with our reading specialists, our teacher librarians. We'll revisit any changes to responsive teaching and learning through our phase 1 and phase 2 schools. Guidance counselors, all of the phases will be in on that. The small schools, and we also focus on schools that have a public library. In the area of the Kayenta system, as you know, we acquired this earlier in this calendar year. We are on schedule to go live completely on July 5th of next summer. It will completely replace the district's outmoded school data system. And we're into we've completed phase 1 now, the initial configuration and the analysis, and the additional phases, the business process, testing, review, then the customization, and converting all the data will occur, is occurring now. In terms of infrastructure, quite a bit of infrastructure. We're very pleased that the government has assisted us with budgets to achieve these. As you know, Bishop Field, it was a multi-year project, after we had some infrastructure issues that resulted, because of safety reasons, that school being fully relocated to Topsail Road for almost a few years. We're still working The gym is still being worked on, but the main school is opened, and I'm sure, from what I've understood from the principal and the staff, they're very pleased to get back into their old building, their new old building. In terms of Coley's Point, the school is anticipated to be ready to open in early 2021. The construction is proceeding, and as the date nears, the district will look for an opportune time in which to execute a movement that causes the least disruption to the school community. So again, on track to be finished early in the new year. Gander Academy is another school that is scheduled to be ready in the spring of 2021 and would be followed by the demolition of the existing school, and the site will be completely finished by summer of 2021. The dual gym, one small gym and one larger gym from the original school, which was a 1990s era addition, is incorporated into the new school. So it's essentially the old school is operating now, the new piece is being added, the gym is being used, the gym will be retained, the new school will open, and the old piece will disappear. In terms of Paradise Intermediate, this is the first tilt-up construction model school in the province. So basically concrete wall sections are poured on the ground, and then it's erected by a crane to tilt it up. And this allowed for faster construction. The building is modeled after the Waterford Valley design, and Waterford Valley High design, and is slated for completion in the summer of 2021. There is a municipal provincial road project that is intended to be completed to complement the school location and the municipal plan. So that's part of the project as well. And of course we have Beta Spare Academy. The new school is being constructed in St. Albans, and it replaces the burned out facility that was in Milltown. The anticipated completion date again is summer 2021, at which point the school population essentially crosses the road from where they're temporarily occupying quarters and move into their new facility. And we have the Corner Brook Bus Depot, which should be finished early in the new year. So that completes, Mr. Chair, the Director's report. I would like to highlight this final slide. As I said, we told the students and the teachers, go outside and learn, and I think this is a fantastic shot here of, it's described here by the person taking the photo, the teacher, as a killer view of the Labrador Straits. So this is Labrador Straits Academy, and aptly named. What a beautiful vista. I think probably one of the most beautiful parts of our province. It's nice to see the kids outdoors enjoying play in kindergarten in what else but a lovely sand pit. So that, Chair, that concludes the Director's report, subject to any questions.
So anyone have any questions directed to the CEO? Hearing none, I would be remiss again if I didn't say a tremendous amount of work was done by everybody involved in our system, and this has to be reflective of the leadership that we do have that participates at our table too. So thank you for the work you do, and it's not just to Tony but to all the our senior crew. Thank you. Next item on the order of business is committee reports. There is no report from the executive committee because there weren't a requirement for meetings. Between this, the Finance and Operation Committee, I call on Trustee Tessier to bring the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I get going, I have 10 motions there that we will be putting forward. But I would like to say thanks again to Terry and his staff. I know they've had a lot of long hours and a lot of stressful time in the last few weeks, and I want to, on behalf of me and the rest of the trustees, say thank you, and please pass along our thanks to all your staff. I know it's been a tough go. I'd also like to say thanks to the bus operators. I know it's been a hard go for them as well. They've managed to scrounge out 145 buses in Canada when in every province in 2 territories in Canada are also looking for buses. So the fact that they've managed to capture them and bring them to our province is great news. And as well, the province and the federal government and Marine Atlantic for, I know you've worked hard with them trying to get those buses over here in a priority method. So, and I know they've been cooperating quite diligently with you. So if you would pass along our thanks to them as well. All right, the first motion, the board approve the auditor's report and accompanying audited financial statements of the fiscal financing agreement between the Nunavut government and for the year ending March 31st, 2020, as recommended by the Finance and Operations Committee. So moved.
Can I hear a seconder? John George seconding. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion carries. Thank you, Steve.
Second one is the board approve the revised quarterly budget status update for the period ended March 31st, 2020, as recommended by the Finance and Operation Committee. So moved.
Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Wintz. Any questions, concerns? Hearing none, all in favor? Those against? Motion carries.
The next motion is the board approve the renaming and upon opening of the new school at Coley's Point Primary to Bay Roberts Primary, as recommended by the Finance and Operations Committee. So moved.
Seconder, Wayne. Any questions or concerns? Hearing none, all in favor? Those against? Motion carries.
Next one is the board approve the renaming of Purcellvik Elementary School to Purcellvik School Complex, as requested and as recommended by the Finance and Operations Committee. So moved.
Can I get a seconder where Peter seconds? Any questions, concerns? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor? Those against? Motion carries.
The next motion is the board approve the renaming of St. Bernard's Elementary to St. Bernard's School, as recommended by the Finance and Operations Committee. So moved.
Can I get a seconder for that motion? Wintz is seconding. All in favor? Any questions, concerns? Hearing none, all in favor? Those against? Motion carries.
The board approved the disposition of noted land to the town of Port aux Basques and acquisition of noted land from the town of Port aux Basques, as recommended by the Finance and Operations Committee, subject to ministerial approval. So moved.
Can I get a second? Eric seconds. Any questions, concerns? Hearing none, all in favor? Those against? Motion carries.
The next one is the board approve the transfer of land at legal survey and expense of the recipient adjacent property owner, as recommended by Finance and Operations. So moved.
Seconder, Jennifer. All in favor, or any questions, concerns? Seeing none, hearing none. All in favor? Those against? Motion carries.
The next one is the approval to purchase a piece of land. The board approved the purchase of a 50 by 400 piece parcel of land adjacent to Exploits Valley High, as recommended by the Finance and Operations Committee. So moved. Oh, subject to ministerial approval. So moved. Can't forget them. The next one is the board approve an easement for a power line to a long-term care facility, as requested by Newfoundland Power, as recommended by the Finance and Operations Committee. So moved. And the final one is the blanket recommendation. The board approved the Finance and Operations Committee report of September the 16th, 2020, as presented. So moved.
Can I get a seconder from Jennifer? Any questions, concerns? All in favor? Those against? Motion carries. Thank you very much for the report, Steve.
You're welcome, Chair.
Next on the agenda is the report from the Programs and Human Resources Committee. Trustee Cullerton. Keith.
I was asked to recuse myself for that particular meeting, Mr. Chair, so if someone else on the committee could state what had happened, please.
Okay. Did we have Kevin? Speak on behalf of that illustrious committee.
Well, speaking on behalf of the committee, we had the notes. There were no motions to be brought forward from the meeting. I do know that, yes, Mr. Colton was not available there, nor were a few others. And I'll throw this out to Pam, because I really don't. I need my notes.
The minutes are indicated, right? Yes, I've got the minutes here. So we, as you can see in the minutes, we had lengthy discussion regarding the HR work plan, as well as an ASL immersion site in East Point Elementary, which has been quite successful. We looked at performance appraisal of probationary teachers, French immersion programs, and we had a staffing update from Mr. Walsh. I think that's pretty much it.
Any further commentary from the committee? Understanding that the chair takes full responsibility for any paperwork that didn't go in the right direction at this particular point in time. But if there isn't anything further, I'm assuming that we're going to get a motion to accept the report from the Programs and Operations. So moved by Peter, or seconded?
So moved.
By Ryan, Kevin. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion, those against? Motion carries. Thank you. New business, Education Foundation report. Tom Kendall obviously wasn't able to attend, and he sent his apologies for not being able to be at this meeting, but he has got a stand-in, and Trustee Ryan, Kevin, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this time I do have my notes. This meeting was held August 24th. It referred to particular items. The first is the approval of the scholarship recipients. In this particular school year, our foundation received 219 applications from students within Newfoundland and Labrador. 70 were from Central Region, 52 came from the West, 8 were from Labrador, and 89 were from the Avalon region. Due to COVID-19, this year's policy was changed to state that 50 students across the province, ideally 22 from the Avalon, 12 from Central, 10 from Western, and 6 from Labrador, would each receive $1,000 scholarships. At this point, I want to say thank you very much to Mr. Terry Hall, Ms. Susan Tobin, and Ms. Susan Clark, who with myself went ahead and corrected all those essays, reviewed all those applications. And based on the criteria for each region, there were 50 successful candidates. And the interesting part of all this is that those 50 successful candidates actually made up for 42 different high schools across the province. And that was a very, very good spread of the applications. That was moved and carried. The other note on that was that Mr. Hall, noted that a subsequent meeting will be scheduled to discuss pending changes to our foundation scholarships, as well as possibilities for former innovation awards and grants that had been distributed in other years, but because of our timelines this year, were not done so. The second item on that report was the approval of the draft financial statements ending at December 31st, 2019. The foundation received $73,000 plus in charitable donations, which was actually a $36,000 decrease in the prior year. Proceeds from payroll 50-50 draw were in excess of $223,000, and a portion of that was used for the $50,000 scholarships. The foundation's unrestricted cash position increased to $415,000, and this increase was accountable to the innovation awards and grants being deferred. All the CRA obligations were met, and that report was moved, seconded, and carried. I'll move that this report be adopted as read, begging a seconder.
Seconded by Hayward. Questions, discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Those against? Motion carries. Next, 7.2 NLISE report. There is no report because there's no meeting requirement. 7.3 is
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. I attended a meeting of the School Milk Foundation on February 17th at the board office. I'm not going to read through. A copy of the minutes has been included in your package. I'm not going to bore you by reading through the minutes because everybody else here can read as well as I can or better. I just wanted to mention 3 significant points. That's all from the meeting. As you probably already know, selling chocolate milk in the schools has been a very big issue because of the great amount of sugar in the chocolate milk. But Saputo Milk has announced that they have a reformulation recipe for chocolate milk that would fit under Canada's food guide. So the sugar is a lot less and the milk is palatable. That's one thing. The other thing is that the School Milk Foundation has retained Kim Myrick and Tom Cooper to do an extensive strategic review of the School Milk Foundation as to where it might go in the future, whether it's relevant or whatever. So these 2 individuals are individuals from Mon. Not sure what their titles are, but right. Okay. And finally, one other point. Since last fall until that particular meeting, the School Milk Foundation had saved a fairly significant amount of expenses. How? And a motion was made to donate $25,000 of that money saved to repurpose it for Kids Eat Smart Foundation. So that was done at that meeting. So that's the 3 things, 3 most important things from the meeting. And I'd like to move now that the board approve this particular report.
Can I get a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Ray. Any further discussions? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion is accepted. Thank you very much. 7.4 is the strategic plan for 2020 to 2023, and we're going to ask one of our senior staff to speak to that, and then we're going to look to Hayward afterwards to deal with the motions associated with the report. So, Susan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Presented for approval today is the 2020-2023 draft strategic plan for the Newfoundland and Labrador English School District. The strategic plan was created based on consultation with a variety of stakeholders, including school communities, that consist of students, parents, teaching and school staff, school councils, district staff, as well as the Newfoundland and Labrador Teachers Association and the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of School Councils. The Board of Trustees provided input at the December 2019 Board of Trustees meeting, and the Board also received a presentation on the draft strategic plan on March 25th, 2020, and as well on June 11th, 2020. And the draft strategic plan was approved by the NLESD executive in August of 2020 this year. So it's presented here today for the Board of Trustees approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Trustee Blake.
I move that the board approve the draft strategic plan 2020 to 2023 as presented, acknowledging that there may be some small changes proposed following a provincial government review.
Thank you, Trustee Blake. Seconded by Wayne. Any questions, considerations? Trustee Burden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question from page 7 of the strategic plan, and I was going down through it and I noticed the total enrollment numbers for the district, and this says the 2019-2020 enrollment numbers, so I'm assuming that's the previous year to this year. That's 63,368. Do we know at this point where we are in this school year, and how much of a drop does that represent from the year prior to that? Ballpark numbers.
We're pretty close. Trustee Burden, if you bear with me for a minute, I should be able to get the most recent update.
My sense is over the last year to this year, it was pretty stable. There was a decline just prior to that.
Yeah, it's declining generally every year. Keep in mind now we're still navigating through our school year,
Sure.
and enrollment numbers are being confirmed. No, I don't have the latest update.
That's fine. That's fine.
It is very close to that number, Scott. There have been attritions in the last number of years of anywhere from 300 to 500 to, in extreme cases, 1,000 a year.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, I know we were 66,000, and so it translates to about roughly 300 to 500 a year attrition.
And I know in the latest literature that you'd read from the district and the stuff that we circulate, we use the round number of 65,000. So there's been, in the last couple of years, a bit of a decrease from that then.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any further questions before we call Trustee Gill?
Has this gone to Minister Osborne yet, or is it? I saw the letter at the beginning of it.
Right. So the process is we approve at this level, and then government has to go through there. They've got a whole strategic group of staff officers at government. They go through all of the agencies, boards, and commission strategic plans. We get feedback. Generally, it's formatting, it's language, usually small changes. And the other piece, of course, this year is that it's a strategic plan in a COVID environment. So there's a caveat there as to how many of the goals and objectives we can achieve through this year. But it was drawn up without COVID in mind, largely, but with COVID environment sort of informing where we are now.
Right.
Susan, I don't know if you want to add anything there with the timelines.
Sure. Yes, the Department of Education actually also provided input into the plan as well in our draft consultations, or our draft review of the plan. And the timelines have been adjusted given the COVID implications. Normally this would have been submitted earlier to be approved by this time of year. But they've given a 6-month extension, so that will mean that they've asked us to send it to the department by December. It'll be reviewed in the January through to March, and then put to the House of Assembly for approval in March of 2021.
So in terms of formal timelines, we were without a strategic plan because the last one ended, and this will inform our work plan. So even though it's not fully approved, we don't see it being substantially changed, so it's enough now for us to operate on for this year.
One of the reasons I asked that question is because one of the things that I really enjoy about Mr. Stack's report at these meetings are the photos and the descriptions of where these children are going to school, and I just thought it might be a nice touch if all these wonderful photos that are within the draft here, if there could be captions so that the people reading the plan would know where these activities are taking place. It's just a suggestion.
Oh, it's easily done.
Thank you, Pam. Peter.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Not related to the strategic plan itself. I'm just curious, a little tangent from it though. Have we gotten any further updates from the province on the new Education Act, which we were expecting in the spring?
To be honest, there has been no update of where their status. They've been preoccupied, obviously, with the restart of school and all the other activities. The only indication that I've had through informal channels from the minister is that they are looking at some of the regulations within the Act for change, some of the school review type stuff, and that has been indicated that they might be changed. But a substantial review that was indicated before, I will follow up to find out if there's any change in status on that. Any further questions? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of those against? Motion carries. Thank you. The next order of business is to consider the ingoing and outgoing correspondence. These correspondence items would have been circulated to all the trustees around the table. So are there any questions or pieces associated with correspondence? Trustee Blake.
If I could, Mr. Chair, the correspondence that we see in 8 and 9, I'm assuming is correspondence that goes to and from the minister and the department. I'm just wondering, many of us have received correspondence since school has reopened, particularly from schools like Woodland Elementary concerning issues that they might have. How are these collected? I'm assuming they're not governance, so they become a part of the operational issue and don't appear on as part of the correspondence that the district receives. Just a comment on that, please.
Okay, so from basically we've received lots of communication on an annual basis. Most of obviously in this world comes through email and those bases. So, some is of operational nature and is directed directly at governance. And in those cases, we make sure it's circulated to everybody involved in the piece. In terms of the issues, normally what would happen is the district would be notified through the email and would construct a correspondence to go back to the individual. If it is an operational issue, it'll come from the director. Nine times out of 10, or even more, 99% of the time, it's an operational nature and it'll come from the director. The question then becomes is how do we what happens to the correspondence and the log of making sure and where those are housed, and how do we archive those particular inquiries? And I'll turn that over to Tony if he's...
Yeah, so Chair is correct in that if most of the correspondence is of an operational nature. The volume is substantial, particularly this year, related to the events that transpired in the spring, the planning. Obviously, we're into a consultation phase, so the volume is such that it would probably take up several, maybe 100 of these binders to actually to copy and produce. But we do follow up on all the correspondence. In the case of correspondence from school councils, you know, they're responded to by the staff, generally speaking. If it's something that is of a governance nature, it would appear in one of the committee reports, perhaps, that the committee would review, one of your committees, the standing committees of the board. And this is usually just the correspondence that's outside of that would be government policy, governance issues, and that's what it's limited to. I don't know if that's an explanation, but we have electronic records of everything that's sent to us. There's no destroying it, so, and we respond just about to all of it. Now, in some cases, if it's multiple correspondence on one single issue, as is the reference that you just made there with respect to Woodland, we provided a generic response back to all of the parents involved in that particular school, and that would be on our files.
Okay, thank you, Hayward. And we'll go to Trustee Gill.
I just want to follow up on that issue because I was curious, having received all those emails about Woodland and from other schools as well, not just that school, parents, I mean, from other schools. And I often wondered what not the line, but what you say that it was a generic response. Is it possible for me or for any of us to see what the official response was to those parents?
Certainly, yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
In most cases, we try to. They're usually embedded in some fashion in the trustee update that occurs every week. We'll make some reference to it. In some cases, we link it to a document. And I believe that the correspondence to Woodland went to the local trustee and the chair. And one other member, I think it was Trustee Ryan, who queried it. So we did provide the correspondence to those individuals.
So, sorry, Trustee Aspel.
One of the parents included it in an email when she sent a second, parent sent a second email and included the letter embedded in that, so you can find it there. Yeah.
The important thing that I take away from this, and sometimes they get blindsided on it, sometimes there's correspondence that just comes to trustees as a global group and does not include our senior staff in that, because, and it's an operational question that they're raising. And I'm faulted at it times, but I am also getting a little better at it now in terms of making sure if that happens, that it's CC'd to our staff so that we can make sure we don't fall down on the loop of response if it is clearly an operational issue.
Very good point, actually, Mr. Chair. I think it's important sometimes as trustees we get directly contacted by parent groups, school councils, and of course we may be the ones receiving the email. We may not be the ones who can act on the email. So anytime I receive an email from a parent or a parent group or any member of my school community, I often forward it to the appropriate person. Most of the time I forward it to the director. On occasion I would forward it to Mr. Hall or Mr. Walsh, but I think it's important that any correspondence we receive does not sit with us, because we're not doers in a sense when we receive any kind of correspondence. It's very important that we move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Blake. Any further questions? Okay, if not, on the correspondence, so sorry, sorry, Kevin, Trustee Ryan?
Would it be appropriate for me to add an addendum to a report at this point?
Seeing who you are, no. No problem, Kevin. I'm sure that the table can manage that.
You're as good as I am.
Thanks, Kevin.
The addendum I would like to add to the report is simply that, and it was, I apologize for not remembering this, but in that meeting that we had, there was a report coming from Ms. Georgina Lake about ASL and how that had been introduced at East Point Elementary, how the program was working, that it had taken in 7 students so far from the St. John's metro region. I think that was I think a giant step forward so far.
Thank you for Kevin, and I did get that out of Pam's report, that she did allude to that in a brief session, but the detail is what's important, and I thank you for that further expansion on the report, and well worth the update, amendment. Any further, pass the chair over to Keith Colleton, trustee.
This is just something going back to not trying to amend or add an addendum to a report, but I think Kevin had mentioned the fact that school milk was giving $25,000 to school lunch. Am I right? I think that we as a board should acknowledge that contribution somehow, even in a letter or something. I mean, that's substantial, and I think an accolade needs to be sent their way on behalf of us.
Thank you for that, and good pickup. So we'll make sure that that does take place. Thank you. Anything further? So that concludes the formal agenda. So the next item on the business is a motion to adjourn to closed. So moved by John George, seconded Vince Carter. All in favor? Aye. Those against? Motion carries. So we'll take a second or two now to allow the room to get organized for the closed session. Thank you.